The babysitter's last call wasn't to 911. Mud. There's something unsettling about houses that look too perfect after sunset. The kind where every curtain is drawn to an identical height. The yard is mowed in precise lines, and even the mailbox stands straight, polished, unbent by time. The Parker house was exactly that, so precise that it almost dared the world to disturb it. On paper, this was just another Friday in Crestwood, a small Minnesota suburb known for its quiet streets and overly friendly neighbors. The Parkers were one of those families that seemed to embody everything normal. 2 kids, a tidy lawn, and a calendar full of PTA meetings. The kind of people who still left Christmas lights neatly rolled in labeled boxes in the garage. They trusted everyone. That was part of their charm, and that trust extended to Emma Holloway, their babysitter. Emma had been working for them since last spring, after Mrs. Parker saw her handing out flyers for dog walking and tutoring near the high school bulletin board. She was only 17, but she had a sense of reliability that made adults forget her age. Polite, quiet, responsible. She always showed up early, never used her phone too much, and brought her own snacks so she wouldn't touch the family's. That evening, she arrived at exactly 6:01 p.m., the headlights of her old Honda cutting through the last stretch of dusk. Mrs. Parker greeted her at the door, heels clicking on the tiled floor, perfume trailing behind her like a curtain of lilacs. "Noah's been a bit fussy today," she said, fastening her earrings while trying to manage the toddler squirming in her arms. "He's been asking about the thunder. Says it's coming." She laughed nervously. "Forecast says clear skies, though." Emma smiled. "I'll make sure he sleeps fine. He likes the dinosaur nightlight, right?" "Yeah, blue one," Mrs. Parker replied, kissing Noah's forehead. "And don't mind the cameras. David set up a new one in the hallway last week. He's still trying to figure it out." Emma followed her gaze and noticed the small dome camera above the front entry. It was one of those new security models, silent, with a faint green LED glow that made it look like an unblinking eye. The Parkers left at 6:32 May, promising to be home around midnight. Their laughter faded down the driveway, swallowed by the stillness of Crestwood's immaculate streets. Inside, the house settled into its evening rhythm. The grandfather clock ticked with mechanical precision. The air vents hummed softly. The living room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fresh laundry. Emma took off her jacket, folded it neatly over the arm of the couch, and set her thermos on the coffee table. She'd done this routine dozens of times, but tonight something felt heavier in the air. It wasn't fear, more like a subtle awareness. The kind of thing you only notice when you stop moving. At 7:45, Noah was tucked into bed. He was a sweet kid, 3 years old, all freckles and curiosity. "Emma," he said, as she pulled the blanket up to his chin. "What's that noise?" She paused. "What noise, buddy?" "The whisper noise," he said, pointing toward the baby monitor on the nightstand. Emma smiled softly. "That's just the wind, Noah. Go to sleep." But as she turned off the overhead light, she paused for a second. The monitor did make a faint, static hiss, like distant voices half swallowed by static. She adjusted it and waited. The sound stopped. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe It was just feedback. Downstairs, Emma fixed herself a cup of cocoa and curled up on the sofa. Her phone resting beside her, she scrolled aimlessly through social media while a muted crime documentary played on the TV, something about a missing person, an open case, and unanswered calls. She didn't really watch it. She just liked the noise, the illusion of company. At 8:14 p.m., her phone lit up. Unknown caller. She frowned. Usually, she ignored unknown numbers, but something about the timing made her hesitate. It rang once, twice, then stopped. No voicemail. She shrugged, locked the screen, and took another sip of cocoa. Then it rang again, same number. Only this time, when she declined it, her phone buzzed immediately with a voicemail notification. She pressed play. Static. Long, slow breathing. Then a faint voice that didn't sound quite right. The words were hard to make out, distorted like an old recording, but she could have sworn she heard her own name. Emma. She froze. The room suddenly felt colder. She replayed it. The sound repeated, same whisper, same strange hiss at the end. But before she could process it, her phone lit up again, the same number calling. She stared at it for several seconds. Her reflection in the black glass looked ghostly, warped by the glow of the screen. This time, she didn't answer. And yet, on the baby monitor upstairs, a faint voice echoed, like a phone speaker bleeding through the air. She turned toward the stairs. For the first time that night, she realized how quiet the house truly was. Tick, tick, tick. The clock in the hallway counted every second she didn't move. The third call came while Emma was halfway up the stairs, one hand on the banister, the other holding the baby monitor like a compass. Unknown caller. Same digits. Same blank label. She let it ring out, then pressed the voicemail icon again, more annoyed than afraid. Teenagers learn to tolerate spam calls the way they tolerate cafeteria food. You just live with it. But the message that played was not a warranty scam, not a political ad. It was a slow inhale, a whisper that stretched into a shape like cold breath on glass spelling out her name. Emma. Not shouted, not threatening, familiar, and that is what scared her most. She tried something simple. She copied the number, switched to the dialer, and called back. It clicked to life with the old recorded operator voice, the kind you hear in movies and hospitals. We're sorry. The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again. Then a gentle tone. Then nothing. She waited, phone to her ear, as if silence would confess. It did not. She hung up and felt sheepish for expecting it to. In Noah's room, the blue dinosaur glowed like a lighthouse. He was asleep, one hand splayed over his chest, lips parted. The baby monitor whispered its static lullaby. Emma adjusted the sensor, checked the window latch, then backed out slowly, like a diver returning to the surface. Down the hall, the new camera's green LED blinked. On, watching. Recording a hallway where nothing ever happened. She thought about Mr. Parker, proud of his system. It logs everything, he said last week. Time stamps, motion alerts. We can check it from our phones. Great. Digital memory for a house that never forgets. Back downstairs, She opened the Parker's laptop on the kitchen counter and ran a reverse lookup. Everyone does it. If a number wants attention, you give it homework. The results loaded. No carrier, no owner. Tagged on some forums as phantom calls, a few people claimed the calls came from their own numbers. One person swore the voicemail repeated whatever they had just said in the room. Emma laughed softly. Internet comments are brave in the dark. She closed the laptop. Then she heard her phone vibrate across the marble. Another call. She answered this time. Hello. Breathing. Not heavy. Rhythmic. 1, 2, 3. A faint crackle like old vinyl. Her name, but cut into thirds. Ma, as if the voice was learning how to carry it. Who is this? She asked, her voice steady. The breathing paused, then a dry click, like a tongue unsticking from the roof of a mouth, and the line went dead. She stared at the timer. The call had lasted exactly 17 seconds. She did not know why that detail mattered, only that it felt like a number someone would write down. Emma texted her mom, casual and short, so she would not worry. Weird spam calls tonight. All good. 3 dots bubbled, stopped, then finally, block it, honey, and lock the door. The simplicity of a mother's advice can be both comforting and tragic. It assumes the world can be handled with a toggle switch and a deadbolt. Emma smiled despite herself, checked the front door, and slid the chain into place. Click. The sound felt small in the big quiet. She blocked the number. It called anyway, but now it showed as blocked caller. Her phone, helpful and cheerful, offered to silence future calls from unknown numbers. She declined. People who babysit should not mute the world. She watched the screen pulse with the incoming call, then placed it face down, as if that stripped it of power. The TV, still on mute, showed an aerial shot of a neighborhood that looked too much like Crestwood. A field of roofs, each one a closed story. She unmuted. The narrator described a case built from digital traces, a life reconstructed through pings, logs, and timestamps. The words floated into the room like dust motes. At 9:41, the landline rang. Emma did not even know the Parkers still had one, but it sat near the fridge like a fossil. She picked it up because, somehow, landlines feel more official. Hello. Silence. Then the operator again. The number you have dialed is not in service. Emma frowned. She had not dialed anything. She was holding a call that should not exist. The phone line popped once, a little thunder in copper wire, then returned to silence. She replaced the handset slowly, the way you place a glass on a shelf you do not trust. Her phone chimed with a voicemail, transcribed to text. It showed one word. Upstairs. No number, just that word. She touched the message, listened, and heard the static breathe. The whisper was there, wider this time, like a mouth nearer to the mic. Upstairs. Emma's first instinct was anger. You can be afraid and still annoyed. She grabbed the baby monitor, turned the volume up, and walked to the base of the stairs. Nothing on the feed except the low hum of the room and the slow respiration of a sleeping child. She climbed. Halfway up, she noticed the hallway camera's LED had turned from green to red, then back to green. A quick blink, like a wink. People say cameras do that during firmware updates. People say a lot of things to soothe themselves. Emma stepped onto the carpeted landing and felt the faintest vibration under her feet. Houses settle, vents rattle, old nails complain. She told herself all of that, then kept walking. Noah's door was cracked just enough to let the nightlight breathe into the hall. She pushed it open with 2 fingers. He was still there, still sleeping, Dinosaur still casting that deep-sea blue on his cheek. She stood motionless and listened. The baby monitor's hiss was steady, almost oceanic. Then a thin tone threaded through the static, like someone tuning a radio past a station. She turned the unit down to 0. The tone continued. It was not coming from the monitor. It was coming from the room. She followed it to the closet. Every parent's closet carries a treaty with the dark. You agree not to open it quickly, and it agrees not to spill. Emma grasped the handle and paused, forehead near the painted wood. If you are a poorly placed toy, please do not jump, she whispered, smiling at her own nerves. She opened the door. Shoes, a stack of blankets, a plastic bin of building blocks, a tiny tux from a cousin's wedding. The tone faded, then returned from behind her. She turned. It was the baby monitor, screen black, volume off, still making a sound she had not asked for. Back in the hallway, her phone buzzed on repeat, as if it had been trying to speak while she was in the room. 7 missed calls, all blocked, 1 voicemail. The transcript showed nothing this time, just a timestamp. 9:57. Matem. She listened anyway. No breath, no whisper. Only a room tone that felt too large for a phone speaker, like the call had been placed from inside a church or a tunnel. On the far end of the hall, the attic string hung like a single white hair. She did not plan to pull it. Planning is one thing. Curiosity is an animal that lives under the floor. She retreated to the stairs, then stopped. Another text arrived, not from a contact, not even from a number, just a label. Unknown. The message was short. Emma! The door. For a full second she did not move, because nothing in her life had prepared her for the feeling that a house had a voice. She turned, caught between Noah's room and the first floor, and listened for the front door. No knock, no rattle. Just the clock, counting out truth like a metronome. Tick, tick, tick. On impulse, she opened the Parker's security app on her phone, the one they had once logged her into just in case. The dashboard bloomed to life. Living room camera, hallway camera, exterior porch. Each showed a still thumbnail. Each offered a live view with a tap. She watched the living room first. Empty couch, folded throw. Her thermos where she left it. The hallway view showed the back of her own head. That gave her a brief, absurd comfort. If a camera could see her, then someone could confirm she existed. She tapped the porch camera. The porch looked like a staged photo for a magazine. Clean welcome mat, tiny seasonal wreath. Then, movement at the edge of the frame, a sliver of motion like a sleeve, leaving the shot. She rewound 10 seconds. The interface skipped, then froze, while the app spun its little circle. Her phone, still in her hand, placed a call on its own. She watched in disbelief as the dialer opened and the same not in service number appeared. The call connected for 1 second, 2, 3. The operator began. "We're sorry." The call ended. A second later, it dialed again. She tried to cancel, but the button did not respond at first, as if the tap had a long commute. When it finally ended, the call logged itself neatly between 2 incoming calls. Outgoing. Same number. Same impossible connection. Her phone brightened. Camera view returning to the porch. Live feed. Nothing there now. She went still, held between the pull of instinct and the gravity of proof. What was safer, to trust the empty frame or the feeling in her bones that something had just been there? Downstairs, the landline rang once, a single chime, then fell quiet like a cough hidden in a theater. She did not run. She chose the slow walk, the kind you do when you do not want to startle whatever might already be watching. At the base of the stairs, she stopped again because she could hear the refrigerator humming and the heater ticking, and beneath those real house sounds, the softest trace of a second line opening somewhere in the walls. A faint coupling. Old homes do not have blood, but they do have veins. She pressed her palm to the drywall and felt a gentle tremor, as if the house were holding its breath with her. She reached the living room and found her phone on the coffee table where she had left it, except it was not still. It was quietly dialing again and again, the not-in-service number in a loop that reset every 30 seconds. The display showed a pattern now. 21 seconds connected, 9 seconds idle. Repeat. Her first thought was rational. Glitch. Her second thought was not. Someone, somewhere, had decided to talk only in pulses, and she was the receiver. She lifted the phone, and the call timer reset at 0, as if grateful to be held. Up the street, a car door closed. Normal night sound. She waited for the follow-up sound of laughter or conversation. None came. Just the car door. Then, the long pause of a street settling back into its shape. She stared through the blinds at the reflection of her own eyes in the glass. The phone buzzed in her hand, the call ending, then beginning again, like a wave. A small joke surfaced in her mind. Uninvited. At least someone wants to talk to me on a Friday. She smiled, then let it fade. Humor is a life jacket, not a boat. Emma opened her contacts and created a new entry for the number that did not exist. She named it Nobody. It felt like a spell, like naming a fear made it smaller. As soon as she saved it, the phone dialed Nobody again. She exhaled, long and slow, and made a decision that felt both obvious and brave. She would call the Parkers and tell them she was experiencing something strange but manageable. She would sound calm. She would ask if they had noticed issues with the system. Then, if it continued, she would call the non-emergency line. Not 911, not yet. Things were odd, not dangerous. She scrolled to Mrs. Parker's name, pressed call, and lifted the phone. The line connected instantly, but the voice that answered was not Mrs. Parker. It was the operator, polite and unbothered. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed is not in service. Emma hung up, forehead tightening, then tried Mr. Parker. Same recorded apology. Same tone. She tried her mom. Same thing. She tried her own voicemail, and only then did the network behave. Her outgoing greeting played in her ear, cheerful and old. She did not remember recording it. She listened to herself say she would call back soon. The sound made her feel two places at once. From the kitchen, the landline rang again, short and soft, as if learning the house's volume. Emma lifted the handset and did not speak. On the other end, the operator began her apology, then stopped midway, the sentence hanging without a verb. Something else moved into the silence, like a stranger stepping into a doorway. For a heartbeat, Emma thought she could hear street noise on the line, a distant car, a pair of footsteps on pavement. Then, close to the mic, the smallest voice. Not a man, not a woman. A child practicing a word. Up. The line dropped. She replaced the handset and stood for a full count of 20, the way you wait to see if a wave will bring something more to shore. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Another outgoing call to nobody. The timer climbed. 21 seconds. Ended 9 seconds. Began again. She watched the loop and had the sense of a pendulum. Clocks keep time. Calls can keep time, too. The thought arrived cold. If someone wanted to mark an hour without a clock, they could send a call that lasted the same count again and again. A metronome you could not stop. Emma lifted her eyes to the hallway camera. The green LED blinked once, then went dark for a long breath. When it lit again, she felt, rather than saw, a change. The camera was on, but the house felt like it had turned its head, as if attention had shifted from watching to listening. She whispered, without meaning to, "What are you?" The room held the question without answering, the way people do when they know the answer will be expensive. She made one more reasonable choice in a night that was bending away from reason. She opened a new note on her phone and began to type a record. Time, event, feeling. Not because she thought anyone would need it, but because writing forces the world to stick to the page. She typed the first line, 10:12 p.m., repeated calls from disconnected number, baby monitor tone, hallway, cam blink. Landline partial operator message, texts with single words, upstairs, nobody. She saved it and felt a little more anchored, like she had tied one end of a rope to herself. In the doorway between the living room and the hall, a draft moved past her shins, the kind that rides low along the floor. Vents do that, she told herself. They send air like a river. She bent to check the register and heard, from the metal grill, the faintest scrape, like a fingernail testing a coin. She backed up slowly, not because she thought something was in the vent, but because some part of her that still believed in childhood rules had woken up and wanted distance. Her phone vibrated with a new notification that did not belong to any app she recognized. Security log updated. She tapped it, and the Parker's app opened to a page she had not seen before. Event timeline. At the bottom, a note stamped by the system. 10:14:32, Front door open, 10:14:33, front door closed. She stared at the line and waited for the alert she had not heard. She was in the room. The door had not opened. She knew what she knew, and the log did not care. The call in her hand ended at 21 seconds. The idle period began, 9 seconds to choose. She lifted her eyes toward the stairs, where the blue of the dinosaur pooled like shallow water. If the house was keeping time for her, then the next pulse would arrive right as she put her foot on the first step. She stood there, heartbeat stuttering to a new rhythm, and did what scared people always do when they still believe in order. She counted. 1, 2, 3, and as the next call began to dial itself, as the porch camera thumbnail refreshed to a new still image she could not fully see, as the landline prepared its soft single chime like a throat clearing, Emma understood something she would not be able to explain later. The house was not haunted in the way stories love. It was networked. It was connected. And something else was connected to it. The difference matters only if you think doors and signals are different kinds of openings. She put her foot on the stair, the phone warm in her palm, the call breathing in her ear again, and felt the curiosity pull harder than the fear, which is how so many missing people begin the last ordinary thing they ever do. By 10:20, the storm that wasn't in the forecast had begun. Not rain, something quieter, heavier, the kind of low-pressure air that makes windows pulse in their frames and pets hide under furniture. Emma watched the curtains move slightly, even though the glass was shut tight. The air had weight, and she could feel it pressing against her chest, as if the house itself had begun to breathe in rhythm with her. She walked back to the living room, trying to keep her mind grounded in the familiar. Mug on the table, faint smell of cocoa, the TV still flickering soft light across the walls. But everything felt a little off now, like the brightness had been turned down one notch too far. The color of the room didn't match what she remembered. Her phone lit up again. Not a call this time. An alert from the Parker security app. Motion detected. Basement door. Emma froze. There wasn't supposed to be any motion in the basement. She tapped the notification and waited for the feed to load, the progress circle spinning like an unblinking eye. The screen flickered, then steadied. It showed the basement door at the far end of the hallway, closed, unmoving. But at the bottom of the screen, another timestamp. 10:18:54. Door opened. 10:18:59. Door closed 5 seconds. The same gap between two breaths. She replayed it, her fingertip trembling slightly, and watched the door swing open by itself. Pause, then close again. No one visible. No shadows. Just movement. And then, almost comically, the phone dialer flashed open again, another outgoing call to nobody. Emma whispered to herself, "You've got to be kidding me." She turned the TV volume up, anything to fill the air. The documentary host was interviewing a detective, saying something about phantom calls before disappearance. It was a coincidence. Had to be. Still, she muted it again. 2 on the nose. She decided to check the basement, not because she was brave, but because logic demanded a reason. things move because of drafts, loose hinges, air pressure. Always explanations. Always. She grabbed her flashlight, one of those small ones from the junk drawer, and made her way down the hall. Each step toward the basement door felt longer than it should have. The closer she got, the colder the air felt, as if the house had its own weather. The metal knob was cool against her palm. She pressed her ear to the door before turning it. No sound, no hum, no whirring furnace. Just silence so thick it felt electric. She opened it. The light switch didn't work. Of course it didn't. She aimed the flashlight downward, illuminating wooden steps that descended into a gray, unfinished space. The air smelled faintly of wet concrete and something else. Ozone, like burnt wires. She took a breath and whispered, "Noah's asleep. You're fine. It's nothing." The flashlight beam cut across the washer and dryer, the rows of paint cans, and the old toy chest near the wall. Nothing moved. Nothing looked wrong. Until she saw the far corner. There, half hidden behind the water heater, was an old rotary phone. Yellowed plastic, dust coating the receiver, the kind of thing that should have been thrown out years ago. Its cord coiled loosely across the floor. The weirdest part wasn't that it was there. It was that it wasn't plugged in. The wire hung free, frayed at the end. And yet, the dial tone was humming. Emma stood perfectly still, the flashlight shaking in her hand. The noise was faint but unmistakable, a line alive with power. She stepped closer, watching her own reflection in the dull metal of the water heater. The dial began to spin on its own. Click, click, click. Each turn deliberate, rhythmic, patient. She didn't need to count to know what number it was calling. When it stopped, the receiver lifted slightly, as if pulled by a weightless hand. The voice that came through was not whispering this time. It was calm, level, even polite. "Why did you answer?" The flashlight dropped from her hand and rolled across the floor, beams spinning wild circles on the concrete walls. By the time she snatched it up, the phone was silent again. The receiver rested in place, as if nothing had happened. Emma backed up the stairs, pulse hammering so hard she could hear it in her teeth. When she reached the top, she slammed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Her phone vibrated. One new message. Unknown. "I told you not to." She didn't realize she was crying until she saw the reflection of her face in the glass of the hallway frame, the photo of the Parker family smiling on the beach. Her tears looked out of place in their perfect world. The baby monitor crackled upstairs. A man's voice, low, almost conversational. "She's awake." Emma ran. Emma's shoes struck the stairs like drum beats. Too loud for a house that size. Every step echoed back at her, a fraction later, as if something else was following half a beat behind. The monitor hissed the whole way up. That thin static had changed. It wasn't just sound now. It had rhythm. Breathing. Noah's door stood open wider than she remembered leaving it. The blue dinosaur still burned steady on the dresser, but its light felt wrong, too pale, too dim, the way a sky looks before lightning. She hesitated in the doorway, whispering his name once. No answer. The blankets on the bed shifted just slightly, and she felt the smallest breath of relief. He was still there. "Hey, buddy, it's okay," she murmured, keeping her voice soft. No movement. She touched the comforter. It was warm, shaped like a body, but when she pulled it back, the pillow beneath was bunched and stuffed under the sheet. No Noah, just the faint indentation of where a small head had been. For one full second, she couldn't breathe. Her ears rang so hard that the house disappeared. All that existed was the pulse behind her eyes. Then, click, the monitor. She turned toward it. The handheld unit in her palm had switched to camera mode on its own. The screen showed a grainy live feed of the hallway. Only one figure visible, Emma, standing right where she was. Then the image stuttered. Another figure flickered behind her for half a frame. Taller, leaner, barefoot. She spun. Empty hall. No footsteps. No sound. Just the faint scent of ozone again. Wet metal. Burnt air. She whispered to herself, "No, you're just panicking. This is what panic feels like." But the words didn't land. Panic didn't make footprints, because there were footprints now, just visible in the thin light spilling from Noah's lamp. Small, bare, dusty prints, child-sized, leading out of the room and down the hall toward the attic ladder. She followed, knees trembling. Noah! The name felt wrong coming out. Too fragile. The ladder string swayed lightly, even though no air was moving. Emma reached up, pulled it down, and a cold puff of air rolled over her. She climbed halfway, enough to lift her eyes above the opening. The attic was darker than black. The flashlight beam dissolved in it instead of cutting through. She called again. "Noah!" A shuffle. Not footsteps. The dry rustle of fabric. Then a whisper so close it scraped the edges of her mind. "He's sleeping." The flashlight flickered once and died. Emma dropped back to the hallway floor, hitting hard enough to knock the breath out of her. She crawled backward until her spine touched the wall, staring at that open attic mouth. From up there, something exhaled, slow and deliberate, like testing her reaction. The monitor in her hand came alive again. The screen showed the attic interior this time, even though she hadn't pointed it there. It displayed a figure crouched near a beam, face hidden, arms folded around something small. The picture bled with static, but she could make out blue fabric, a dinosaur pattern. She didn't scream. She couldn't. She just pressed every button she could find, trying to switch the feed, call, anything. The screen froze, then glitched to a white block of text she had never seen before. Connected. Device 04. Audio active. A crackle. Then a man's voice, again, perfectly calm, conversational, like someone leaving a voicemail. "You shouldn't have looked, Emma." The monitor clicked off. She ran downstairs, every instinct collapsing into pure survival. "Grab your phone. Get out. Don't look back." She reached the front door and twisted the lock. It wouldn't move. She yanked, kicked, screamed. It stayed sealed. Then her phone rang again. Screen lit with that cursed label. Nobody. This time she answered, because not answering had become worse. "Where's Noah?" she demanded. A pause. The faint sound of rain that wasn't outside. Then, softly, He's home. I am home, she shouted. Another pause. Then the voice, smiling somehow. No. You're at my house. The call ended. The landline began to ring instantly, overlapping tones echoing in different rooms, like an orchestra of alarms slightly out of tune. She pressed her palms over her ears, shouting, "Stop it!" And one by one the phones obeyed, falling silent in perfect sync. The hush that followed felt even louder. That was when the lights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed evenly, deliberately. The hum of electricity slowed. The refrigerator stuttered, and the television turned itself on. The screen showed static first, then resolved into the feed from the living room camera. The same one Mr. Parker had installed, only now the timestamp on the bottom didn't say 10:32 p.m. It said 12:20 a.m. She checked her phone clock. 10:32, but the system thought midnight had arrived. On the screen, the living room looked exactly the same, except she wasn't in it. Someone else was. A girl, same hair, same hoodie, same thermos on the table. Emma watched herself sit on the couch, smile faintly at something off screen, then turn her head toward the camera, as if hearing her. The image leaned closer, until only the reflection of her eyes filled the frame. Then static swallowed the picture again. Her body refused to move. She could taste iron in her mouth. Fear or blood, she couldn't tell. Upstairs, the monitor crackled once more. Through the static came a child's voice. Sleepy, muffled. "Emma, he says you have to stay." She whispered, "Noah, sweetheart, where are you?" No reply. Just that rhythmic, static breath again. Deeper now, closer, as if the speaker was right beside the mic. The flashlight she'd dropped earlier at the basement door blinked on by itself. Its beam cut a single line across the floor toward the basement, like a pointing finger. Then her phone vibrated. One new text, same blank number. Downstairs. She shook her head violently. No, 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 no. The words came out between sobs, but her legs betrayed her, moving anyway, following the light like an animal hypnotized. At the top of the basement steps, she paused. The rotary phone below was ringing now, slow, old-fashioned chimes echoing through concrete. She counted each one. 5, 6, 7. On the 8th, it stopped. Silence again. Her phone dialed automatically. She didn't touch it. The call connected. This time the voice was quieter, strained, as if speaking through water. "It's your turn to watch the house." And then, faint in the background, a second voice, a child's, whispered, "Good night, Emma." The line went dead. She stood there for a long moment, staring into the dark. The smell of ozone thickened until it burned her throat. Somewhere far behind her, the hallway camera clicked once, recording. The sound snapped her back into motion. She bolted toward the front door again, slamming her shoulder into it so hard the frame cracked. The door opened half an inch, just enough for a cold night air to bite her skin. She shoved harder. Hands, small, impossibly strong, pushed back from the other side. At 7:12 a.m., Mrs. Parker's SUV rolled quietly into the driveway. The sun was pale, weak, the kind of light that makes everything look flat, like the world hasn't decided to wake up yet. The porch light was still on, and the front door stood half open. Its brass chain snapped. She called out before stepping inside. "Emma! Noah!" No answer. Her heels clicked once on the hardwood, then stopped. The living room was spotless, too spotless. The TV was frozen on static. A thermos sat uncapped on the table. Cocoa spilled in a thin circle that had dried overnight. By 7:19, the first cruiser arrived. Officer Klein's report noted no sign of forced entry, no visible struggle, one missing juvenile, one missing babysitter. He found Emma's phone on the sofa, battery dead. Last outgoing call logged at 11:47 p.m. to a number listed as nobody. The Parkers swore they'd never seen it. The officer photographed everything. The footprints on the hallway carpet, the faint handprint near the attic string, the small scratch marks inside the basement door frame. Each detail would later appear in the case files, labeled inconclusive. Neighbors woke to the sound of sirens. Crestwood wasn't used to that kind of noise. They came out in robes, coffee mugs trembling in their hands, whispering theories before the facts had names. One woman swore she saw lights flickering in the Parker windows around midnight, like camera flashes. Another said she'd heard a child humming through her baby monitor, even though her daughter had been sleeping beside her. The officers logged the statements, but didn't follow up. They were still busy rewinding the Parker security footage. The recordings began at 6:03 p.m. when Emma arrived. Normal. She smiled at the camera, waved once. At 8:14 p.m., she looked toward her phone, frowned, then laughed. At 9:02, she left the frame for 8 minutes. At 9:57, the hallway camera glitched, a half-second of pure white, followed by a still image of the front door, open wider than it should have been. Then, for almost 2 hours, nothing. Just the quiet movement of the house, shadows shifting, lights dimming, the slow crawl of time in an empty frame. Until at 11:46 p.m., the living room camera picked up movement again. A figure walked through, female, approximate height 5'6". Wearing Emma's hoodie, she crossed the room, stood by the window, and seemed to look directly at the camera. Her face was partially hidden by glare, but investigators later noted that her mouth appeared to be moving. No audio matched. The system's microphone had gone dead at 11:44 p.m. 1 second of silence, and the girl was gone again. In the basement feed, what little survived the corruption, the rotary phone could be seen hanging by its cord. The dial spun once, paused, then twice more. The timestamp burned into the bottom corner, read 0:00, midnight. Then every file ended at the same exact second, as if the system itself had decided the night was over. By 9 a.m., detectives sealed the property. The Parkers were taken to a hotel. Volunteers combed the neighborhood. A drone sweep of the nearby woods found nothing. Even the scent dogs lost the trail halfway down Crestwood Lane, where the asphalt warped slightly from an old sewer repair. The case went cold fast because nothing fit. No prints, no ransom, no motive. Just two people erased from an address that pretended not to notice. Weeks later, the Parkers got their devices back. Out of habit, Mr. Parker powered on the security hub to see if the new technician had restored anything. It booted slowly, flickered twice, then displayed one unread notification. Security log, playback ready. The file was short, only 21 seconds long. It began with the front door camera showing the empty porch, a soft hiss of static. Then, faintly, a girl's voice. "It's your turn to watch the house." The feed ended with the same low hum that fills the gaps between channels. And underneath that hum, if you turned the volume high enough, another voice, small and sleepy, whispering, "Good night, Emma." The Parker case file grew thicker by the day, but not heavier with answers. Detectives filled it with transcripts, photos, timestamps, everything that should add up but somehow didn't. The first anomaly came from the digital forensics unit. When they pulled the footage from the home security hub, every clip stopped cleanly at midnight. Yet the raw data showed extra seconds of file length, 21 of them, all blank, all filled with a uniform, low-frequency hum. Audio engineers said it wasn't static. It was structured sound, a repeating pattern, identical to the dial tone of a disconnected line, slowed by half. Phone records were worse. Emma's cell had placed 36 outgoing calls between 10:14 p.m. and 11:47 p.m., all to the same number that the carrier confirmed had never existed. When the company tried to trace the routing, the path looped back through an obsolete relay tower decommissioned in 2009. The tower's coordinates matched the empty field 3 miles from the Parker home. Investigators went there expecting old hardware, maybe buried cable. They found nothing except a cracked concrete pad and the faint outline of a phone company logo almost worn away by weather. No power, no wiring. Yet phones in the area still picked up a phantom signal near midnight. Inside the house, crime scene techs uncovered fingerprints, hundreds of them. But none matched Emma or the Parkers. Most were partial, tiny, as if made by a child's hands pressing lightly against surfaces. On the baby monitor casing, the prints formed a near-perfect circle around the speaker grill, as though someone had cupped it to whisper inside. The lab ran chemical enhancement and discovered trace metal residue consistent with oxidized copper, not human skin oils. That detail never made the news release. Then there was the basement phone, the rotary model dated to the 1970s, serial number etched by hand, receiver worn smooth. The electrical cord wasn't connected to any outlet, yet technicians measured a low voltage coursing through it, steady, constant, impossible. When they recorded the tone, it wasn't a dial hum at all. It was a modulated human frequency. Slowed down, it produced fragments of speech. 4 words could be isolated before the tape distorted. Watch, house, stay, home. Detective Klein filed a supplemental note at 11:03 p.m. on day 6 of the case. Subject's phone battery at recovery site was drained, yet internal clock logged usage until 2:11 a.m. set. After that, device shut down normally, suggesting someone or something navigated menus post-incident. That usage was a single repeated action, the camera app opening, recording for 21 seconds, closing, then repeating. Nothing visible in the videos but darkness and the faint ticking of a wall clock somewhere close. The time between each clip matched exactly 9 seconds. The same loop Emma had discovered hours before. The press latched onto the mystery within days. Headlines coined it the Babysitter'S call. Parents in Crestwood unplugged their baby monitors. Sales of home security cameras dropped 40% that month. Online forums compared the audio hum to the numbers station tapes from the Cold War. One user uploaded a cleaned version of the sound, claiming to hear a heartbeat hidden in the waveform. Within hours, the post vanished. The account was deleted. Detective Klein's partner, a 20-year veteran named Salazar, began showing up earlier and leaving later, rewatching the footage frame by frame. He told colleagues he could see Emma move in the background of clips that had already been logged as empty. When analysts checked, those frames were blank. By week 3, Salazar requested leave, citing insomnia and persistent auditory illusions. His statement simply read, "The calls haven't stopped. They just changed devices." 3 weeks after the disappearance, a maintenance worker at the county evidence facility noticed the Parker House security hub, logged, sealed, powered off, had turned itself on. Its small indicator light glowed green. The screen displayed one line, "Live feed active, device Zopor." No one could access it. The feed had no destination. It simply streamed endlessly to nowhere. The chief ordered the unit disassembled. When technicians removed the internal memory drive, they found a new folder dated the previous night. Inside, one file, 21 seconds long. No video, only sound. A child's breathing, then a woman's voice, whispering from what sounded like the bottom of a stairwell. It's not over. Houses remember. The lab transcript ends there. The file corrupted itself moments later. 6 months after the Parker disappearance, the case looked ready for cold storage. Then the lab in St. Paul sent one last packet of results. They'd finally cracked the metadata buried in Emma's phone backups, the ones stored automatically to her cloud at 10:15 p.m., the night of the incident. Hidden among photos and homework PDFs was a small encrypted folder titled simply Logs. When decrypted, it contained location pings every 21 seconds from 9:57 p.m. until 2:11 a.m. The coordinates never changed. 43 or 85 9092 on Chonsk 31. The site corresponded not to the Parker home, but to the empty service field where the old telephone relay tower had stood. Detectives drove there again. This time, ground-penetrating radar picked up a hollow cavity beneath the concrete slab, an old maintenance bunker sealed since the late 1980s. Inside, they found racks of obsolete switching gear, shelves of mold-eaten files, and something far stranger, a series of cassette tapes labeled by hand with dates, each separated by exactly 1 year. The most recent bore the number 2025. The reel still turned slowly inside a machine plugged into nothing. Forensic audio specialists cleaned the recording. The first 2 minutes were mechanical tones, but then came a woman's voice reciting names. 43 of them. All matched historical missing person reports from nearby counties. The last name was Emma Holloway. The tape's timestamp showed it had been recorded 2 hours before the babysitting shift began. Investigators traced ownership of the relay facility and discovered it had once been leased to a private telecommunications contractor dissolved in the early 2000s. The founder, one Dr. Lawrence Keene, had experimented with early automated emergency response routing systems that would place predictive calls when a 911 line was likely to be used. The project was scrapped after a lab accident involving a feedback loop that kept redialing disconnected numbers until circuits melted. Keene vanished 3 months later. No record of his death, no next of kin. The FBI's cyber forensics team concluded that fragments of Keene's prototype code had survived in outdated firmware used by several consumer-grade home security products, including the model installed in the Parker house. The code's behavior fit the timeline. It searched for dormant phone IDs within a closed radius, then tested connectivity through ghost calls and low-band frequencies. In theory, it could activate nearby devices simultaneously: baby monitors, landlines, even unpowered phones, creating what the engineers called a self-sustaining loop. Officially, the report blamed software contamination and an electrical feedback surge for the night's anomalies. The system, they said, had generated audio illusions and magnetized dust particles that produced false fingerprints. No evidence of human foul play. Case closed. But Detective Klein kept digging when he compared Emma's outgoing call pattern with archived maintenance logs from Keene's project. The times matched exactly. Every victim named on that tape had made or received a final call 21 seconds long, 9 seconds apart. The numbers were identical to the loop length hard-coded into Keene's algorithm. It wasn't random. It was legacy code still running on ghost infrastructure, pinging devices that no longer existed. Klein presented his findings at a departmental review. They were classified as speculative, systemic glitch, the memo read. No causal link between relay data and disappearance. 3 days later, the department servers auto-synced and erased the supplemental folder he'd created. Only one printed copy remained in his desk drawer. That spring, the Parkers moved away. The house sold fast. The new owners replaced every camera and phone line, yet neighbors began noticing something strange around midnight. A faint hum drifting from the yard, like a dial tone carried on wind. One teenager recorded it on his phone and posted it online. The waveform analysis showed the same slowed dial pattern, ending with a single word spoken under the noise. Stay. Detective Klein retired soon after. He still lives 2 towns over, quietly, no press, no interviews. Once a year, always on May 14th, he receives a call at exactly midnight, 21 seconds long. No number displayed. He never answers, but he leaves the line open, listening to the hum until it ends. Then he writes one sentence in his old case notebook. The system still thinks she's on duty. Every town has a story that doesn't stay buried. Crestwoods is about a girl who did everything right, locked the doors, checked the windows, followed the rules, and still disappeared between 2 phone rings. Some call it a malfunction. Others call it mass hysteria. But the files remain sealed, and the calls never truly stopped. Every few months, a homeowner somewhere in the county reports the same thing. A single late-night ring from a number that doesn't exist. A message that plays for exactly 21 seconds, and then silence. If you ask the technicians, they'll tell you the data is corrupted. If you ask the locals, they'll say the line was never repaired. But sometimes, when a signal loops long enough, it starts looking for a person to answer. Maybe Emma was the first to pick up. Maybe the system is still waiting for someone else to take her shift. So tonight, if your phone lights up with an unknown caller and a tone that sounds just a little too steady, remember what the investigators said at the end of the file. It's not over. Houses remember. Take a breath. Check the locks. And if you love stories that linger in the dark corners between truth and fear, subscribe, turn on the bell, and keep listening. Because somewhere, a line is still open. If this story kept you watching until the end, take a second to breathe before you go, because sometimes the scariest part of these cases isn't the ending. It's wondering how much of it could be true. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. We post new investigations, mysteries, and true crime tales every week, each one built from real reports, psychological clues, and the kind of darkness that hides in ordinary places. If you believe every house keeps a memory, hit the like button. Share this video with someone who loves a good mystery. And tell me in the comments what you think really happened to Emma. Was it human error? Or something we just don't have words for yet? Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay safe. And remember, sometimes silence means the line is still connected. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person who belongs here on Last Seen. Every week, we explore the moments that vanish between logic and fear, the cases that start as ordinary nights and end as whispers on old recordings. So, if you haven't already, subscribe to Last Seen and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next investigation. Every view, every comment, every shared story helps us keep digging. If you believe houses remember, hit that like button. Share this story with a friend who sleeps with the lights off. And tell us in the comments what you think really happened that night. Thank you for watching. You've been listening to Last Seen, where every mystery has a signal and some calls should never be answered.